You made these yourself? Uncle Richard held up a maple bourbon pecan tart like it was evidence in a trial. What he didn't know was that this exact tart retailed for $140 in my flagship bakery, and we sold 3,000 of them last week alone. But how do you explain empire building to people who think you're playing housewife in your kitchen? Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Westchester was exactly as suffocating as it had been every year since I was born. 23 family members crammed into a dining room designed for 12, the air thick with judgment and turkey grease. I'd arrived early to help with dessert, not because my mother needed help, but because bringing my own baked goods was the only way to guarantee I'd have something to eat that wasn't passive-aggressively commented on. Of course she made them, my older sister Victoria said from across the table, her tone dripping with condescension. Baking is what Emma does. It's her little hobby. Little hobby. I'd heard some variation of this for 7 years. 7 years since I'd quit my job as a paralegal to open my first bakery. 7 years of family gatherings where I was introduced as our Emma, who makes cute little cakes. They're very pretty, Aunt Patricia added, her smile pitying. So much detail. You must spend hours on these. I did spend hours on them. My head pastry chef Javier and I had spent 3 weeks perfecting the crystallized ginger garnish alone. But they didn't know about Javier. They didn't know about my team of 47 pastry chefs across 6 locations. They just saw me as Emma, 34 years old, unmarried, playing with frosting while the world moved on without me. Cupcakes are cute but not profitable, Uncle Richard declared, setting down his tart and reaching for his wine. He was a real estate developer, the kind of man who measured success exclusively in square footage and net worth. Emma, you're a bright girl. When are you going to do something serious with your life? Something serious. Last quarter, my company's revenue was $85 million. This year's projections had us crossing $340 million by December. But I just smiled politely and adjusted the piping on the chocolate ganache cake I'd brought. She's 34. My younger brother Trevor said, not looking up from his phone. He was 28 and worked in tech sales, which made him the family's current golden child. Still playing around with cupcakes. Mom, aren't you worried? My mother's face tightened in that way it did when discussing her disappointing eldest daughter. Of course I'm worried. Emma could have been a lawyer. She had a good job at that firm. Instead, she quit to open a bakery that, let's be honest, barely keeps the lights on. Barely keeps the lights on. My flagship location in Manhattan's Tribeca neighborhood grossed $2.3 million last year. The Upper East Side location did $1.8 million. But they'd never asked about my revenue. I'm doing fine, I said quietly, the same thing I always said. Victoria laughed, sharp and cutting. Emma, you rent a tiny apartment above a bakery in Brooklyn. You work 80 hours a week for what? The pleasure of smelling like butter? That's not fine. That's arrested development. The apartment above my Brooklyn bakery was actually a 3-bedroom penthouse I'd bought outright for $3.2 million 2 years ago. But they'd only visited once, declared it quaint, and never asked about the deed. When was the last time you took a vacation? My father asked, entering the conversation with the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years as a corporate attorney. When did you last have health insurance that wasn't some marketplace plan? I had platinum-level health insurance through my company, which employed 347 people across 6 states. I'd taken 3 weeks in Paris last spring, staying at the Ritz and staging at La Durée. But explaining that would require explaining everything else. Maybe you could sell your recipes to a bigger bakery, my cousin Jennifer suggested helpfully. Like franchise it or something. Let someone else do the hard work while you collect royalties. I had franchised it. 15 locations across the Northeast, with 20 more planned for next year. But I just nodded and continued piping rosettes on the ganache cake. The problem, Victoria said, her voice taking on that edge it got when she was about to deliver what she considered hard truth, is that Emma's afraid of real success. She's hiding behind this small bakery thing because it's safe. If she never really tries, she never really fails, right? The irony was suffocating. I bit the inside of my cheek and focused on the cake. Still, Aunt Patricia said, her tone gentler, it's nice that Emma has something to keep her busy. Better than sitting around waiting for a husband, right? The table laughed. Good-natured, pitying laughter that made my hands shake slightly as I piped. Trevor looked up from his phone suddenly. Hey, Food Network is doing that billionaire business special tonight. Should be interesting. Oh, I love those, Jennifer said. It's always fascinating to see how real entrepreneurs build actual companies. Real entrepreneurs. Actual companies. I set down my piping bag and reached for my water glass. Uncle Richard grabbed the remote. Let's watch it. Better than listening to your Aunt Patricia's stories about her book club. The TV flickered on. Food Network's logo filled the screen, then cut to a dramatic opening sequence. Bold graphics. Sweeping shots of industrial kitchens and gleaming bakeries. A narrator's voice, deep and authoritative. Tonight on Food Network's Billionaire Business. The secret empire behind America's most exclusive desserts. How one woman turned a Brooklyn apartment kitchen into a $340 million luxury baking empire that's revolutionizing the industry. The room went silent. My heart started pounding. This wasn't supposed to air until next week. The producer had promised me advance notice. But here it was, happening in real time, in my parents' living room, during Thanksgiving dinner. The screen filled with footage of my flagship Tribeca location. The elegant storefront. The line of customers wrapped around the block. The interior with its museum-quality display cases and $800 wedding cakes arranged like sculptures. Emma Lawrence Patisserie Elegante has become the most sought-after bakery in America, the narrator continued. With 6 locations, 15 franchises, and a wholesale operation serving the country's most exclusive hotels and restaurants, Laurent has built an empire that generates over $340 million in annual revenue. Uncle Richard's wine glass froze halfway to his mouth. The camera cut to footage of me, professional hair and makeup, standing in my test kitchen wearing a pristine white chef's coat, demonstrating technique to my team. I looked confident, authoritative. Nothing like the quiet woman decorating cakes at their Thanksgiving table. Emma, my mother's voice was barely a whisper. I kept my eyes on the screen. Today, Laurent employs 347 people across 6 states, the narrator continued. Her flagship cakes sell for up to $2,500. Her corporate catering division serves Fortune 500 companies. And her exclusive wedding cake service has a 2-year waiting list. The camera cut to an interview with a food critic from the New York Times. Emma Laurent isn't just a baker. She's an artist and a businesswoman who recognized that there was a massive market for ultra-premium baked goods. Victoria's face had gone pale. The show cut to footage of my Paris training, then shots of my licensing deals, my product line in Whole Foods, my partnership with Four Seasons Hotels, my collaboration with Williams-Sonoma. Lauren's business acumen is as impressive as her baking skill, the narrator said. She secured over $40 million in private equity funding, negotiated licensing deals worth tens of millions, and built a brand that Forbes recently valued at $380 million. $380 million, Trevor repeated, his voice hollow. The show transitioned to an interview with me, filmed last month in my Tribeca flagship. I was sitting in the elegant upstairs private dining room, wearing a black suit jacket over my chef's whites. My family thought I was crazy, my on-screen self said with a slight smile. Quitting a stable job to bake cakes. But I knew there was something here. I knew I could build something meaningful. The interviewer leaned forward. Your net worth is now estimated at over $200 million. What do you say to people who dismissed your dream? On screen, I paused. I say that success isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it builds in ways people can't see until it's undeniable. I wasn't baking for their approval. I was baking because I loved it. The show cut to commercial. The living room was completely silent except for the distant sound of someone's phone buzzing. 23 people stared at the TV screen, then slowly turned to look at me. I was still holding my piping bag, frosting half finished on the ganache cake. Emma, my father said finally, his voice strange. What was that? A documentary, I said quietly. Food Network profiled me last month. I didn't know it was airing tonight. That said you're worth $200 million, Uncle Richard managed. The estimate is high. It's closer to $180 million in liquid assets, but the company valuation is accurate. We did $340 million in revenue last year. My mother made a small sound, like air escaping from a balloon. Victoria found her voice. You own 6 bakeries? 7 now. We opened Boston last month. Plus 15 franchise locations and a wholesale operation that serves 43 5-star hotels. The Whole Foods deal, Trevor said, scrolling frantically through his phone. It said $12 million annually. That's correct. The commercial break ended. The show resumed with footage of me teaching a masterclass at the Culinary Institute of America, then my corporate catering division serving tech companies, then aerial footage of my Tribeca location at night. Emma Lawrence Patisserie Elegante isn't just a bakery, the narrator concluded. It's an empire built on butter, sugar, and unwavering commitment to excellence. From a Brooklyn apartment to billionaire status in just 7 years. The show ended. The credits rolled. Nobody moved. Finally, Uncle Richard broke the silence. Emma, why didn't you tell us? I set down my piping bag carefully. I tried. For years ago, I invited everyone to my flagship opening. You were busy. 3 years ago, I won the James Beard Award. Mom said that's nice, and asked if winning a cooking prize meant I'd finally get a real job. 2 years ago, Forbes profiled me. I sent you the article. Nobody mentioned reading it. The silence was crushing. You all assumed, I continued, that because I worked with my hands, because I chose baking over law school, I was failing. You saw flour on my clothes and thought poverty. You never once asked about my revenue, my expansion plans, my success. You just decided I was the disappointment. That's not fair, Victoria said weakly. Isn't it? You just called me risk-averse 5 minutes ago. Victoria, I took a bigger risk than anyone at this table. I walked away from security to build something from nothing. But you never bothered to look. My mother was crying now. Emma, we didn't know. You didn't ask, I corrected gently. My father stood, walking to where I sat. For the first time in my memory, he looked uncertain. Emma, I owe you an apology. We've been blind. Dismissive. Yes, I agreed. You did. Can we start over? My mother asked. Can we see your bakeries? Understand what you've built. I looked at my family, at their shocked faces and guilty eyes. And I felt something shift. Not quite forgiveness, but possibility. The Tribeca flagship is open tomorrow, I said. 2 p.m. I'll give you a tour. Show you the kitchens, introduce you to my team. Let you see what a little hobby looks like when you build it right. We'll be there, my father said. All of us. I stood, gathering my supplies. But right now, I need to go. I have a video call with my Paris team at 8. We're finalizing the Champs-Élysées lease. I walked to the door, my professional rolling case packed efficiently. At the threshold, I turned back. For what it's worth, I never needed you to understand baking. But I needed you to respect that I was building something real. That it all mattered. The drive back to Brooklyn felt different. Lighter. By the time I reached my penthouse, my phone had 63 notifications. Messages from everyone. All variations of, we had no idea. We're so sorry. We're so proud. I read them in my test kitchen and smiled. They'd finally seen it. Better late than never. But the empire I'd built, that was mine. Kneaded from scratch, baked in the heat of their doubt. And I wouldn't change a single recipe.